This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's start. A very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shweta Tripathi. I'm host today's night. We have three hosts and one Payal and Akriti. Okay. Now let's
Akriti and Shweta. So,
Payal.
yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So let me tell you about some RPA Kangaroo session. It's about having discussion about RPA related topics and with industry experts. And we have some brands over the RPA. First, School of RPA, where we have online instructor, lead, and classroom training on Blue Prism UI Path, Automation Anywhere, and RPA Business Analytic trainings. Second, automation clouds where we do RPA project for small business. Third, one page general which specialize in content development, blogs, case studies, and white paper around the topic of RPA. And last, RPA Gyan Guru, which is all about webinars and event about the topic of RPA. Uh, we have two speakers in the webinar. First is Herbert Fuchs, who is ex CIO and CDO in ASGC Group in Dubai. And second, Mustahil Saeed, he is a development manager of RPA. Before going to webinar, we have some rules regarding webinar. Speaker session is expected to be 30 minutes. There will be a 10-minute QA session at the end. Please post your questions in the chat window. Second, if you would like to ask a question at the end instead of typing in the chat window, please message the host. If time permits, there will be a chance for you to ask. Third, the session may be recorded for internal use and later publication wherever applicable. If you do not agree for recording the session, please sign off from the event. Okay. Fourth, for privacy and other reasons, presentation recording are not being shared except when approved from application in the later stage. Fifth, you may introduce yourself in the chat window, but do not self promote or advertise. Now I hand over to the Akriti.
Thank you, Shweta. Hi, everyone. I am Akriti Srivastav. I will be your host for evening. Let me introduce our guest tonight, Mr. Herbert Fuchs, who will talking about prerequisites for a successful RPA implementation, and there is a must-watch session for those who want to introduce RPA in their organization. RPA project manager and business analyst will also benefit from this session. But firstly, let me introduce some more about him. He is an ex-CIO and CDO in ASGC Group in Dubai. He had done executive MBA in information and communication technology and MSc in information security management. He has versatile and highly accomplished executive offering significant experience in digital transformation. He also worked as a senior director, global IT infrastructure and information security in Stryker for last 5 years, and also had a 11 year of experiences with McDonald Corporation as an enterprise architect. He is also worked as a business consultant with GE Information Services for 2 years. We all welcome you, sir. Now it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. If you, please let me share my screen. So I hope that can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so should you also want to see my lovely face? I hope you can see me. Should you not want to see me, just tell me and I will switch it off.
No problem.
Anyway, hello everybody. Greetings from Austria. So I'm slightly behind you in time zone and obviously not facing monsoon or any kind of that experience, but also had like heavy rains for the past few days. But now, you know, when I look outside, I can see the sun coming through again. Anyway, thank you for, having me. I'm really excited to have this opportunity of talking to you about the RPA and, the success with RPA and how to get there. So don't expect a technical session, right? So as you've heard in the introduction, I come from a CIO, CDO background, so I've been in executive roles for quite some years in my career. But I want to talk about, what I consider the prerequisites and the dependencies on your journey towards a successful deployment of RPA. From my perspective, deploying RPA in no matter what industry should really be a no-brainer, right? Because it makes a lot of sense. It has significant benefits. It really contributes significantly to the improvement of how things are being done in an organization, right? But why don't we hear or see more of RPA deployment success stories? Right, so I want to talk about that, basically, give you my point of view, my experience, but really more from a non-technical perspective. But the one thing that I want to say up front is the reason why, there's not more saturation, there's not more talk and more successes about RPA, it's not related to technology. That is my strong opinion based on, a number of experiences. So let me try to move to the next slide. Agenda. These are basically the topics that I'm going to cover. More kind of, as I said, from a executive stakeholder perspective, ownership, funding, strategy, the people side, the process side, a roadmap on and governance. The first important question really is, why RPA? Just recently, I gave a presentation on digital transformation, the whole subject of digital transformation, which is very close to my heart, which is very dear to me because it's a significant opportunity for businesses. And of course, I'm not the only one saying that, and everybody jumps on that, but many companies, many organizations are approaching transformation not in the right approach. And I'm speaking from examples because I've been typically in each one of my roles, moving from one industry to another one, I've been charged with a transformational responsibility with digital transformation, with organizational transformation, you name it, right? And I've seen a lot of what is being done wrong, and I've also seen examples and have been part of examples and initiatives where things were done rightly and properly. So my first take on that, whether it's transformation in general or whether it's, the topic of RPA, a company, an organization needs to be clear on why. Why do we want to do that, right? Why do we want to consider RPA, right? What are the business drivers, the business reasons? And I've tried to just come up, with a few on the left-hand side, which I consider are, proper reasons and the right reasons, right? It's, speed, it's scalability, flexibility. So a business wants to grow, right? A company wants to grow by acquisition or by organic growth, right? We want to make sure that we're not just, throwing more headcount, more people to a problem, but we actually look at, how can we work smarter? How can we work better? How can we use technology to approach the challenges that we are facing, right? Or to automate mundane tasks, things that are not really adding much of a value in the operations, in the running of a business, right? I mean, how can we actually automate them and free up people's time to more important tasks, to more, strategic activities, to more innovation type of activities, right? Or, obviously reducing cost. Reducing cost is typically on every single, business agenda and business strategy, which is of course, very important. It's also about improving productivity. We want to increase profitability. So these are the business drivers that should actually lead us to look at opportunities like RPA. But then on the other hand, there's also what I can see, a number of drivers, a number of reasons for people to go with RPA, or for companies to start transformation, but which are the wrong reasons, which is like the pride of the respective CEO. So the CEO wants to say to his buddies, to his friends, wow, we do RPA, we do transformation, and the other ones want to jump on it, right? And the other want to say like, me too. I also want to do it because I don't want to be considered to be backwards. I don't want to be like left behind. So let's also do RPA, which again, is not the right driver. Or, these days everybody talks about digital. So, you know what, RPA pretty much sounds like something of digital. So it's really cool. So we should be doing it. So these are the reasons that are the wrong reasons, the wrong drivers for a company, for a business to look at RPA. So let me jump into kind of more concrete content. And as I said, the presentation is really not about technologies. It's not about technical, because again, when you look at all the technology, I strongly believe all the great technology is readily available for businesses to deploy RPA or to implement other digital initiatives. Okay, so what I consider first and foremost a very important component, a very important factor on the success of an RPA deployment is the entire aspect, the entire concept of the executive and stakeholder commitment. So for me, RPA is part of a transformation. The decision to go with an RPA deployment is not just like one of the many changes that are being, or technology changes that are being deployed in an organization, right? This is really part of a transformational agenda, part of a transformational initiative, because it changes the way that we work and it changes the way that we do business, right? So that being said, it's very important that, it is not considered, let's say, a bottom-up, but I believe it's very important to be considered a top-down initiative. So that means, there needs to be commitment being expressed by the respective executives, by the respective leadership team in an organization to transform, and as part of the transformation to deploy great tools like RPA, great technologies like RPA, right? So, but it's also very important, when the executives, when the leadership talks about, all these initiatives, that they are transparent about it. Because, what's the worst thing, and what I can see in many, many examples, that the reasons for transformation, the drivers for transformation, the reasons for change are not being transparently and clearly communicated throughout the organization. So that means, when people learn about change, we know that, right? We know that from our own experience. When we hear about change, first of all, humans are not necessarily and typically not, let's say, the pro-change individuals, right? Because first of all, we feel like, change. what could that mean to me? What does it mean to me? You know, am I at risk of losing my job? Am I losing importance? Am I losing influence, organization, you name it, right? So therefore, it's very important that there is clear communication about, you know, these are the reasons why we consider deploying technology like RPA. Be fact-based, right? You know, the stakeholders, the executives, they have to communicate fact-based to make sure that there's no room for rumor. People understand why, and people have a feeling of what to expect. There's no reason to create fear in the organization because it's very counterproductive, and you will not get the buy-in and you will not get the support as an executive that is required to make an initiative successful in the company, right? So create awareness, but also create accountability. It's very important that, you know, when a program like RPA is being communicated, it's also communicated with it who has the sponsorship of the initiative. So let's take the example of finance. When we think about RPA in the finance discipline, I consider the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, or whoever is the highest ranking in the finance organization to be the sponsor of the program, to own the program, so that he or she is the individual to make sure that the organization understands that, you know, for the finance discipline, I'm the one who owns it, and I'm the one who is making sure that this is going to be a success. I'm the one who is making sure that people understand why we're doing it, right? And I make sure that this is going to be a success, right? And I am the CFO. I am also the one being measured against the success or the failure, but hopefully not so, of the RPA initiative. And the CFO has to make sure as well that he or she communicates who are the key stakeholders for this RPA initiative in the finance organization. Let's say later on, it's going to be HR, or in another phase, it's going to be the technical department, the operations department, whoever. It's always very important that, you know, the respective head of the organization is considered and is behaving like the owner of the program. So he or she has to have skin in the game, as I'm calling it, right? And that respective leader has to make sure that throughout the organization, it's clear who are the key stakeholders, who are the one who need to run with the program, who need to drive the program, who are actually measured against the success of the program. And then, of course, it's very important that there's funding for the program, right? Because unfortunately, with many of these transformational initiatives, people believe like, you know what, I'm transforming, and while I'm transforming, I'm already harvesting the benefits. I'm already reducing the cost. I'm already gaining more flexibility or whatever, right? So this is not the case. Typically, the benefits come asynchronous to the investment, which means, first of all, I need to do something. First of all, I need to invest. First of all, I need to change, and then I can see the benefits, you know, floating in. That sequence is also very important, but that means, you know, there has to be funding because the transformation is not for free. There has to be a budget for it, because if without budget, you know, we're already crippling a great initiative because we're not going to have a chance to make it a success, right? But also very important, you know, when we invest money, we need to make sure, and I will come to that a little bit later, we need to make sure that there is monitoring, there's oversight, there is control over the money that's being spent, right? And we have a mechanism on how to prioritize the respective deliverables within the RPA initiative. Let me talk about strategy, objectives, and KPIs. The decision to deploy RPA, like, you know, any other change, any other component of transformation, there has to be, first of all, the reasons, the clarity on the reasons. There has to be a strategy, right? So it all has to be driven by strategy. We should not just try to kind of, you know, get an RPA initiative kicked off somewhere in, you know, in a part of the organization without having it as a part of a strategy, right? So the key is make sure that it's very well understood throughout the organization. And again, taking the example of finance, throughout the finance organization, it has to be very well understood that this is not just by voluntary participation. This is a strategic initiative. And as I said before, within finance, across finance, or whatever the department is that goes first, second, third, whatever, it has to be understood, again, who are the key stakeholders. So the finance, the CFO is the sponsor. The finance director has to play a certain role. One of the finance managers has to play a specific role in the initiative, right? So all of that has to be understood. There has to be transparency on what are the expectations, right? So what do we expect from that? And again, this comes to also be transparent and also be honest about, that there's going to be impact on the organization. Nowadays with all the digital subject and digital topics, and talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, talk about IoT, talk about RPA, you name it. People obviously ask the question, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to my future? What does it mean to my future in this organization? Am I going to lose my job? And typically the response is that, you know what, we just take away the mundane, the non-value add tasks from you, and we will free you up, to do more meaningful things, right? That is very fair, that is very cool. But also let's be fair that, not everybody, right, who is being, let's say, made redundant within a certain process may necessarily be the right individual to take on some more meaningful activities, right? We may have clerks in the finance organization who may not have the profile to take on higher responsibilities, right? So I'm just trying to be very transparent, very fair with you, because this is something that we also have to be fair and very transparent with the people in our organization. We have to have, we have to show up, we have to present what are the opportunities, right? What are the opportunities for the respective individuals who have a different future, a better future, a brighter future or whatever in the organization when their respective responsibility is being automated. But we also have to be fair with individuals who may not necessarily be the profile that can take on more sophisticated responsibilities in the organization. Okay, so let's be transparent, let's be fair when we communicate, when we talk about expectations, right? We also have to be transparent about the progress of the respective program. So it's always a disadvantage, right? It's always a big risk if an initiative is being kicked off, but we are not going to speak about, we're not going to report about the progress, right? And we have to have a feedback loop. So if something is being deployed, if something is changing, let's again, within the finance department, let's talk about it. Let's communicate it. Let's communicate it within finance. Let's communicate it throughout the organization that people know, there's nothing hidden from us, but we know what's happening. And there has to be a feedback loop. There has to be a feedback loop that allows the people in, again, the finance team as an example, to feedback about, what is their experience with the respective RPA, right? Do they feel like, involved? Do they feel like they're playing a role? Are they aware of what's happening? Are they not aware of what's happening? So this communication loop, this feedback loop is also very important. The other important aspect is that, since RPA is about changing something, changing the way we work, we have to make sure that if we want to make the change a success, if we want to make the transformation a success, we have to make sure that, out of the strategy, we have proper objectives and we define smart goals, smart objectives for the people who are playing a role in the initiative and who are important in the initiative. So that means there has to be a respective objectives and KPI for the CFO, for the finance director, for the finance manager, and whoever in the organization has to play a role in the initiative. We have to measure them against the success or failure, but hopefully not failure, of the respective initiative. Because the point is, if you want people to work on change, if you want people to work on transformation, but you're not measuring them against the success of the respective project, guess what? They will continue doing their thing the way that they're used to, but they will not spend time, they will not make an effort to make this RPA transformation initiative a success. So that means their bonuses, their rewards, whatever, have to be dependent on the success of the initiative. Because if you're not measuring people against success, they will not focus on it, they will not work on it. And the measurements, the objectives of the KPIs, they have to be, as I said, across the hierarchy, right? So they have to be top down from the organization, because otherwise the interest, the desire to make it a success will not be there. People and processes. I'm saying something that you've heard most likely tens, hundreds of times. In a transformation, the biggest reason for a transformation to fail are the aspects that are people related. Is it the company culture? Is it the fear of change? Is it the fear of transparency? Is it the fear of people losing influence, and so on and so forth, right? These are the biggest reasons why transformation, why change typically fails. And there is a reputable, market data out there that is showing us that in a transformation, more than 50% of transformations either fail or underdeliver because of some people-related reasons, right? And again, as I said before, typically all this fear comes from the fact that there is no communication, there is no integration, there's no involvement, there's no collaboration, there's no communication. These are the reasons why fear happens in an organization, right? And if people are afraid of losing something, they will do whatever they can to push back to not make the change happen, okay? The second biggest reason why transformational initiatives are failing are process related. And I will come to that, shortly on that slide. So let's talk about the people first. We need to make sure when we think about transformation together with the HR department, the leadership, we need to actually assess the organization, right? What is the impact of RPA on my finance organization, right? What is the talent that I have in the finance organization? Do I have the right talent actually that can help me to drive the success of RPA? What is the as is in terms of my talent base versus what I need to have? What is the to be, right? So, because as I said, not all the individuals are change agents. We have great individuals in our organization who do very well what they're supposed to do, and they do it very well based on their experience, right? Based on their skill set and based on the tenure that they have in the organization, because someone may be the greatest, account payable person ever, and he and she's doing it for 15 years. But that individual may not necessarily be the right change agent to make RPA a success, to contribute to the RPA success from, let's say, the account payable or the account receivable perspective, right? So we need to understand, the people that we have and the people that we need to make it a success, right? And again, be transparent. Be transparent about, this is what we have and this is what we need. Reiterate the roles and the responsibilities in the project over and over again. The CFO has to remind his or her direct reports that, dear finance director, you have an important role to play. Dear finance manager, in account payables, you have an important role to play, right? So reiterate and communicate over and over again what the roles and the responsibilities are and what the expectations are. Because again, we are human beings. We have a tendency to forget certain things. We have a tendency to focus on one, but ignore the other. So therefore, this collaboration, communication, reiteration is very important, right? And then, when we look at processes, and as I said, unfortunately, when we look at, these digital technologies, there's still a big belief out there, in particular in the leadership teams, that, there's a technology, and, this whole digital thing sounds very techy. So that means, I just take some technology, throw it at my problem, and that technology magically resolves my problem, which is very wrong. Again, it's organization, process, and then there's a technology aspect, right? So from a process perspective, what I've seen is many organizations make the mistake and they try to cramp their as-is legacy cumbersome processes into a digital solution, right? And that's very wrong. The other pitfall that I can see is that many companies even don't have a clear definition of what are their business services. So within finance, what are the finance services that finance contributes to the business? There's account payable, there's account receivable, right? There is some asset related stuff. There's G&A related activities, whatever. Okay, so let's make sure that we understand from a finance perspective, what are the services that finance provides and contributes to the overall organization, right? And then let's also document the as-is processes. Let's look at the as-is processes, right? And then, before we try to automate, before we try to put anything or replace anything by RPA, let's also make sure that, we first optimize the processes. We're not just trying to take the as-is old legacy processes and reflect them in a tool. Let's optimize them, but also very important, let's actually look for processes that we can eliminate. Because what you realize, when you work on all these processes, when you look at all the processes, that most likely there is, out of 50 processes, there is 15 processes where people cannot even remember why they are there, right? What is the value add of these processes? Do we still need them? If we don't need them, let's not try to automate them, because it's waste of time, it's waste of energy, it's waste of money. Okay. Also, when we look at RPA and our respective business processes, let's actually think about and be aware what is the level of automation that we want to implement. What is the level of unattended versus attended versus partially attended, right? What do we need to reflect in the process? Can we completely, in a process, can we completely eliminate the human factor, right, by having system-based approvals? Or how far do we need to have, human checkpoints and control points within the process? That means we need to make sure that even when we go for the RPA deployment, there's still a human element here and there and in the various processes. And at what level in the process, right? This is also very important to understand. The other challenge that I saw throughout my career is when we look at the as-is processes and versus the to-be processes is, do we even have the expertise, the process expertise within the organization to challenge the as-is processes? The example, let's take an example. If you ask, one of the finance managers in account payables about the processes, listen, dear finance manager, these are your processes in your account payable function, right? Do you think that, these are the best processes? Of course, the guys in charge, the guys actually making sure that, these processes being executed for the past 10 years. Of course, he will tell you, yes, these are the best processes, because if he's or she's telling you, no, you know what, these processes are really not perfect and we need to improve them, the next question would be very interesting, right? Because you are in charge of that function for 10 years and now you're telling me the processes are not optimized. How can that be, right? So, it's very difficult to ask someone who is in charge of a process, is that the greatest process ever, right? Or can we improve the process? The neutrality about, making a judgment on the process, or the expertise to make sure that, or to say that the process is perfect or not. So in many cases, or typically what it's really recommended to have some sort of a process excellence function that reviews all the business processes, challenges all the business processes, and comes up, with an optimized version of the respective business process, right? Which is then being digitized, which is then being reflected in RPA. Roadmap and governance. The roadmap is a very important aspect because, we have typically, when you look at the companies, we have these great strategies, which are fancy documents, but, also it's very important to have a strategy that it's well understood. How can we make sure that we define a strategy that's being understood by the people in the organization? Employees need to understand what does a strategy mean to them. And the next step is, what is the next level to make the strategy more tangible, to make the strategy a reality, right? So that's actually where the roadmap kicks in. In the roadmap, we define what are the initiatives against the strategy, which is going to implement, the respective benefits or the expectations of the strategy, right? So a roadmap turns strategy into tangible results, right? So the roadmap has to be built in a very integrated approach. So all the stakeholders that actually make sure that a strategy is success throughout the organization need to agree on the roadmap. So it's the CFO, it's the CIO, and other key stakeholders who play a role, who need to make sure that the roadmap, the strategy becomes a success, right? So in the roadmap, we have to define, this is the first part that's being implemented in the finance function. This is the second part. This is the third part. This is the fourth initiative, right? And then the same applies to all the other departments where RPA is going to play a role, right? So we have to have priorities. We have to do one thing after the other, or we may be able to do two things at the same time simultaneously, but we have to define that in the roadmap, and we don't have to just take, a wild start, okay? And also be aware of the dependencies. When you define something in the roadmap, we need to be aware, of the dependencies. What does it mean to the processes? What does it mean to the people? What does it mean to the respective technology? Okay, and also define quick wins in a roadmap. It's really great to have a 3-year strategy, right? It's very important to have it. It's really great to have a 3-year roadmap. But you know what? If you're not delivering anything short term, if you work on something behind the scenes for 2 years and people don't see a change, people don't see a result, right? People don't see improvement, you will lose commitment, right? You will lose buy-in. So that means we have to make sure that there's quick wins. We can prove the concept, we can prove the concept, the benefits of RPA by some quick wins. So people are going to be excited. People are they remain being engaged, and they will continue to support the change, to push the change forward, right? And be, again, transparent about the quick wins, communicate them, because it's again a marketing tool. It's a marketing tool for the people to be excited about, what's happening in the company. Okay, governance. There has to be a governance body. There has to be a governance body, as I said before, defining the roadmap, right? There has to be a governance body that is actually making sure that they communicate, they inform, they promote the roadmap, they promote the strategy, they promote the initiative of RPA, right? But this governance body also has to make sure that they monitor, what's the progress like? Is the progress according to the roadmap? Is it still relevant? Because if things go too slow, right? If we take too much time to implement change, to transform, we may lose relevancy, right? Because our competition may be first and we are falling back, we are running behind, right? So it has to be relevant, and that has to be also monitored by the governance, right? And the benefit realization. So we spend a certain amount of money, but we have to have a mechanism in place that there's a benefit realization. And it's being communicated. We spend 100,000, but guess what? We have a benefit of 120,000, right? That is important to be communicated. Okay, and also important, the governance committee, the governance body, is also in charge of agreeing on the priorities in the roadmap. And in the way that I've been working, with my executive peers, with the governance committees, was basically, for instance, defining priority based on the return on investment of a respective initiative, right? So how much benefit do we gain if we deploy RPA first, let's say for account receivables, and we go account payable second, or the other way around? Where do we get the bigger benefit, as an example, right? Or on a bigger subject, why do we start with, let's say, the finance function, not with the HR function? This has to be driven by business benefits, I would say, right? So the return on investment, the ROI, is one tool to define and to measure priority of initiatives like RPA, but also other initiatives within a transformation framework. Let me also, this is my last slide, let me also talk about a little bit, at least, about technology aspects, right? So as I said before, without any disrespect, to any geeks, any gurus, because we really need them, right? We need them to make these technologies work the way that they're supposed to, okay? But as I said before, when I look at all the technologies, when I look at, all the great tools, great RPA tools that are out there readily available in the market, I think it's a very fair statement to say, if an RPA initiative fails, it's not the fault of the tool, because technology is the least reason for a change, for a transformation to fail, as I said in the beginning, right? So we have great products, and I just highlighted, some of them here on my slide, because I'm quite sure, depending on what requirements that we have, when we understand the requirements, one or more of these tools will do a perfect job to make the RPA deployment a success, right? So what I want to get across again here is, when you select a product, when you take solutions into your proof of concept, be clear on what you need and what you have, right? From a technology perspective, understand the applications that RPA needs to integrate with, right? What are the applications that my, Blue Prism solution has to integrate with? Do I have applications on premise, right? Is it client server applications, right? Is it applications based on client server architecture? Is it web-based applications, right? Is it virtualized? Am I using applications that I'm accessing through Citrix in the normal way, right? What does it mean from an RPA integration perspective? Do I have my application in the cloud versus on-premise? A combination of both, whatever, right? These are aspects that I need to understand when I select technology, of course, right? What are the interface requirements? Is it like, what type of APIs do I need to be aware of? What type of APIs do I need in my RPA solution, right? Think about the administration of the tool and the monitoring, or the configuration. What type of talent do I need? What type of expertise do I need? Is it easy to administer the respective product, right? Can I do it without having programming kind of expertise, programming type of knowledge, right? Is it really like easy, drag and drop, like symbols within, like objects within my application, within my RPA tool to configure the respective workflow, right? Or do I have to have more technical awareness, more technical skills in order for me to be able to configure that? Think about security, right? I mean, because again, I mean, nowadays, obviously, and I kind of, I'm not telling anyone's secret, we need to be aware of the security aspects, right? I mean, how critical is the data that we're working with, right? How far do we have to encrypt the data, right? What do we have to be aware of in terms of the RPA tool running in the cloud, accessing my application that may be on-premise, right? What do I need to be aware of in terms of whether it's encryption, the firewalls, right? Intrusion detection. How do I make sure that I'm not catching any virus or whatever, right? I mean, these are the aspects that are super important from a security perspective, right? And you will realize, depending on the industry that you're in, you may have more strict, more stringent, or less strict security requirements, right? When you work for a financial institution, of course, you're faced with different security requirements, compliance requirements from what you might be, when your business is construction, transportation, or whatever. Okay. Also, think about the connectivity requirements, right? You have cloud, you have on-premise, you have this hybrid, right? I mean, you have the RPA tool talking to different applications. What does it mean from a connectivity perspective? Let's make sure that I'm not actually facing interruptions. I'm not facing poor performance only because I forgot to think about my connectivity requirements, my bandwidth requirements, right? So these are the aspects from a technology perspective. And the last line that I have in my slide, this really reflects, my mindset, my attitude. I'm a strong believer. I'm a real proponent of cloud. So the strategies that I've been defining, the approach or roadmaps that I've defined within my respective roles in the companies that I've worked with was, let's go for a cloud-first guiding principle. This is something that personally I believe in. I believe it makes a lot of sense, in particular when you think about digital transformation. My recommendation is to have a cloud-first guiding principle as part of your business enabling strategy, where of course RPA is part of. So that was my last slide. I hope that again, you walk away from that with the feeling that it was my time well spent. If you say, listen, I've heard all of that, I know all that, great, then I think you're on the right track. If there was something where you think like, it was a good advice, it was a good food for thought or whatever, then I'm also very happy. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening to me, and please let me know if there is any questions at this point in time.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, there is some questions which audience wants to ask. Our first question is, who owns RPA in organization, IT or business?
That's a very good question. As I said before in one of my slides, first of all, the ownership in my mind, right? The ownership of a transformation to be successful, whether it's RPA or other aspects of transformation, there has to be business ownership, right? Because if we try, from an IT perspective, if we try to push RPA, again, for example's sake, into finance, you will have all kinds of pushback. You will have all kinds of reasons why this is not going to work. So the ownership of this change, this transformation to become successful has to be within the respective business function. There's a sponsorship within the business function, but there's co-sponsorship within the IT, because without IT's commitment, it will fail, right? But again, my take on that is we have to make sure that the business really wants it, the business really owns it, and the business drives it to make it a success.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is, how COVID-19 has brought RPA in limelight?
That's also a very good one. And I think COVID-19, right, is being used as not as an excuse, as a reason or a justification for businesses, for companies to talk more and more about digitization, right? When you look up like LinkedIn or any other forum, any kind of other collaborational platform, you will see that COVID-19 pushed work from home, COVID-19 pushed digital, COVID-19 pushed whatever, digital transformation in general, right? This is true to some degree, okay, but this should not be the only reason. I think COVID-19 definitely created more and more awareness in companies that, for instance, businesses were lacking a business continuity strategy. Business were lacking in the flexibility of their workforce being able to work from anywhere, okay? And I also believe there will be push on initiatives like RPA coming out of this whole COVID-19 situation that we are facing right now, okay, which is a good thing, okay, but hopefully we will not see stagnation on RPA with people forgetting about the impact of COVID-19, okay. There is some momentum, some additional momentum, but it should not remain to be the only momentum on RPA, because there's many other good business reasons for considering RPA. Next one.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is, which one is your favorite RPA tools?
To be honest, I really don't have a favorite RPA tool. As I said in my last slide, when I look at the various solutions, I think I could not pick the one over the other, right? I think when you look at existing deployments, you will probably see that there is a prominence, some sort of a prominence of one tool over other tools actually. But I would say in general, all the tools are great tools. They meet the requirements. There may be a preference for the one tool over the other depending on specific requirements. As I said, for instance, what are the applications to integrate with, right? Are the applications to integrate with more on-premise versus on-cloud applications, right? What expectations, what requirements do you have? What needs do you have in terms of the interfaces to various other applications, right? Another reason, another driving factor, or another benefit of one RPA tool over the other might be how much of completely automated, unattended process automation do I want versus the mixture of unattended as well as semi-attended, right? Or human attended kind of, right? I mean, these are the reasons why one tool might be better than the other, more suitable for your respective need, right? But I think it's unfair for me to say, A is much better than B, because that in my mind is not the case, right? They're all great tools depending on their respective use case. The one may be a preference over the other. Next question, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, how COVID-19 affects the RPA business in an international level? Like if we think about that international level RPA, how it will affect?
As I said before, COVID, whether you look at it, from a pure domestic perspective. Let's say you look at, the challenges by COVID within India versus when you look at, the COVID challenges internationally or in other countries. I think the challenges, the opportunities, the risks, whatever, are no different no matter what part of the world, right? And I also, as I said before, I also believe that COVID-19, it actually brought some additional momentum, some additional push on the digitization, on the deployment of, initiatives like RPA, right? I think, in the context, for me, as I said in the beginning, for me, I can see RPA as one aspect in a digital transformation initiative. That's, from my perspective, the way it should be considered, because again, it is a significant opportunity, right? So that means companies will try to go faster in their digital initiatives, because of COVID, but hopefully because of many other reasons, not just COVID. And therefore, we should see acceleration in the deployment of RPA. Again, initially perhaps triggered by COVID, but hopefully going forward, we will not lose the momentum. The more that people get used to the news around COVID, that should hopefully not lead to a slowdown in digital. That should hopefully not lead to a slowdown in RPA deployments.
Thank you, sir. There are no more questions. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and sharing your experience with us. It was great hearing you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody. And I think, if there's subsequent questions, I can be found on LinkedIn. Perhaps, my email address will be distributed so that people can reach out to me. Just feel free. I'm very responsive. I'm very responsible. I'm not ignoring any request that comes in. Okay, so thank you very much for having me, and have a good, rest of your evening and some more, interesting presentation afterwards. Thank you.
Herbert, this is
Yeah.
actually, can I ask a question? This is
Yes.
Satya.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
Sure.
Just a quick introduction, Herbert. Guten Abend. So I am an associate director with Deloitte in India, and I also work for in Germany and Europe for a long time. And I'm also presenting on this topic on Sunday as part of this initiative. But I was looking forward to this session specifically of your presentation, and must say that this has been quite a nice presentation. My question to you, Herbert, is in terms of longevity of the implementations or of the technology. Every technology has a shelf life, right? And in terms of longevity, what do you see in terms of future? How long RPA will remain in context? And then if it has to be replaced, what are the newer technologies which you see in horizon, which will come in at some stage overtake RPA and similar initiatives?
Okay. First of all, thank you for the kind words, and good afternoon back to you. At least for me it's good afternoon. So guten Nachmittag, guten Abend. Thank you. Yeah. So the longevity, the lifespan of RPA. I think it's really dependent on, as you said, what is most likely the next technology going to be. Okay, and I think the one aspect that's going to show us and give us a lot of change in business is this whole aspect of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay, because I think there's significant opportunity, and not just I think because I've experienced myself what the benefits can be. When you deploy IoT, when you look at when deploy machine learning. It's amazing. From my own experience in my past two industries, shipping and construction, the opportunities that we have, by considering these technologies are amazing, are really amazing. And I think, when we look at, RPA for the next, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, I think, this is going to be very relevant. But then we could see some, shift or some replacement by other technologies, like the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, because it becomes more and more feasible in terms of deployment, because we have more expertise, we gain experience, we can see the opportunities. So this is basically what I would expect from that perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Herbert. Thanks a lot, and good speaking to you. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you. If there's
thank you, Herbert. It was a really nice session. Guys, we have shared Herbert's email ID in chat window. If you want to reach him, you can take the email ID from the chat window. Thanks, Herbert.
Thank you so much, and take good care, all of you.
Sure.